Good evening. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Dr. Thomason, roll call.
President Reese, members of the board, please let the record show we have 4 board members here. Amy Kaler is currently attending a National Honor Society event where her daughter is being inducted, and she will be here shortly.
Thank you. We are going to go ahead and have our moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll go on to the approval of the agenda. I move that we approve the agenda as presented. Support. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. We'll go on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Thomason.
President Reese, members of the board, at this time I'd like to welcome up Michelle Reese to have some special recognitions for us, and starting with our points of pride and then going to a few other things that we have tonight. Michelle.
Thank you, Dr. Thomason. President Reese, members of the board, cabinet, and our community, thank you for coming this evening. Each time we get an opportunity to honor our points of pride is a fun time to get to see students, employees, and the volunteers from our schools. So today I'd like to invite Mr. John Dolan from Sossaman Middle School to announce their points of pride.
I picked those flowers myself. Well, thank you all for coming. I have 4 individuals that I'd like to recognize. I wish I could recognize more because there's so many wonderful people on our campuses that do things for us. But I will start with Amity. Are you here? I thought I saw you coming with your mom and your dad. Why don't you introduce your mom and your dad?
This is my mom, Kim Clayton, and that's my dad, Tyler Clayton.
That's for you. So I just want to say a couple of really nice words about Amity. So Amity, she is a member of our student council, besides the fact that she's a great student. Also, this past week, she, on Saturday, performed at Perry in orchestra. She just does so many things on our campus. And when I was picking students, I talked to Mrs. Roner, who's our student council advisor, and I said, who is, like, in your mind, who's your best kid? She kind of looked at me. I said, well, like, who's your go-to child? Who's the one, if you need something done, you're going to go to? And she said, oh, that's Amity. So I thank you for everything you do. I wish you well as you keep going. And I just hope that the next couple of years are just great for you. Thank you. Our parent volunteer, unbelievable. Carrie Ware, come on up here. I did pick these for you. Why don't you tell us who's here with you? Invite them on up.
My kids are with me. Chanel, Charlize, and Cash. Come here.
You know what's really cool? She doesn't like to be put in the spotlight, and she is, and I know she doesn't really like that. We are so blessed to have her as our PTSO sponsor. She does so much for our campus. And when I say she, it's her. She has 3, 4, 5 other people that help her, but on every single event, she is there. I think about, we're on break, and we had the Goodwill come. So they brought chairs. The ladies are kind of sitting outside. I don't know who brought the donuts. And the 5 of us just sat there, and we kind of filled the truck with as much as we had. And again, just another event for us to kind of support our school, but it wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for you. So thank you for everything that you do. Mr. Schuett. So as Todd comes on down here, I don't know, is it 2 years now? Todd is one of our maintenance gentlemen, and that's for you, sir. About 2 years ago, we had a part-time job, and I interviewed Todd, and we hired Todd. And I don't know, maybe a month in it, I'm like, man, I can't, this guy can't be I can't lose this guy. This guy's unbelievable. So we moved some things around, and I basically called the district and said, I'm going to make this guy full-time. How do I do it? So he works during the day. And they allowed me to do that, and he is still doing that. And we're blessed to have had Dan Contreras as our lead, but he's going to leave, but I'm fine because I have Todd. And I mean that. The things that he does for my campus, if you guys come to my campus, besides the fact that it looks great, they care. And that's just so, so important to me. And I so appreciate you, sir. Thank you. Another person who doesn't like to be in the spotlight, Mrs. Savalas, come on down here. I had to hide those from you. So Tanya is a counselor on our campus, and she'll read it in the card, but when I needed a counselor, I was in the process when I first got hired to have a counselor, and it was a woman from Las Vegas, and I don't know, maybe a week before, she couldn't make it. And I was deer in the headlight anyways, first year principal, and she called me and said, hey, I don't know if you saw, I applied, and I interviewed her, and I thank you. I mean, I'm blessed because the things that she does for our kids is amazing. She just makes them feel special. She's there for them, and she does anything that people ask, and our school is just better for it. So thank you very, very much. Now, before you go, you got to tell us who's with you.
Oh, yes. So my husband, Bill, my 2 daughters, Isabel and Ari.
Carrie, you got to come back up here.
For our next school, we get to introduce the proud principal of Higley High School, Miss Nancy Diab Scott.
If I could have my amazing assistant principals come up here to help me also. That would be Dr. Paul Howell, Mr. James Walker, and Mr. Aaron Dilly. So they're going to help me pass these out. First, I would like to start with Mr. Robert Wyatt, our volunteer of the month. So a little bit about our Mr. Amazing Robert Wyatt. I've known this man for a long time when he was at Santan, that now he's at Sossaman teaching science, but he's also been a very, very proud parent volunteer at Higley High School. He has worked with our band for over 7 years, and I have to tell you, every night of a football game or every weekend, every game that he's ever been at, he's the first one there, the last one to leave. And the other day, I remember walking on campus, I think it was on a weekend, actually. He's sitting there drilling, making up this stage that, I kid you not, goes from one side of this room to the other, and he's just out there, and I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I gotta build the stage. And I'm like, it's like you and one other person. And he is truly a tremendous man, and I know Mr. Sharp and the entire marching band are just so thankful, and we are so thankful for all you do for Higley High School. Thank you, Mr. Wyatt. Next, I have a very special young man. Well, Mr. Wayne Conley, come on up. Mr. Wayne Conley is an institute at Higley High School. That's why I love saying young. Hey, he gives me a hard time. You have no idea what I have to deal with on a daily basis with this man. But he brings absolute joy and wonder to our campus every single day. He is there first thing in the morning. He's the last one to leave. Make sure that I stay protected when there might be some incidences happening, whether they're at a game in the parking lot or by students. Then I think my most favorite is, I was going to a meeting, was this last year or the year before, and my car stopped in the middle of the parking lot. And I'm freaking out because I did not want to be late to this meeting, and I'm panicked. Wayne comes right over, and he just like throws me these keys. It's his brand new Jeep. Gives me the keys. Sherry, he gave me the keys to his brand new Jeep. Some of you that have driven with me will know. That alone, he's a miracle man, and made sure that I got to my meeting. And I thank Wayne for everything he's done. He not only retired from Chicago Police, came to Higley High School when it opened in 2001, has been with us, retired with us, came back. He is truly what Higley High School represents. So thank you, Wayne, for all that you do. Mr. Institution, yes. Wayne, I can only imagine what you're saying. The next amazing lady that I would like to bring up, our certified teacher, Mrs. Katie Bryant. Katie, come on up. So I call Katie our Energizer Bunny. This woman has so much energy. So she not only has taken on our Key Club, which has how many, 50 plus members, and truly every single month they are doing some sort of service activity. And then we have a very exciting, innovative International Week coming up. This young lady has organized the entire week and night event. She has met with Gilbert's sister cities. She has gone at night. She has met with people on the weekends. She is truly an Energizer Bunny, and she has a smile on her face every single time that you see her. You walk into her classroom, she's got small group instruction happening. She has different activities for all of the students. She actually differentiates instruction within the classroom, Dr. Schellenberg. It's amazing. It is truly wonderful to see such And a lot of times you don't see that in a lot of high school classrooms, but she truly cares about every individual student and makes sure that that individual student is successful, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in her club. And then I can't wait for all of you to join us, just a little plug, on May 2nd for our International Week. So please come join us. We're going to have food trucks. We're going to have dance. How much? 6 to 8 p.m., and she has organized the entire thing. She's literally worked with every single one of our departments to create interdisciplinary projects and interdisciplinary studies alongside this with each of our departments. So thank you, Katie, for everything. And of course, our last amazing. How many times have I said amazing, Dr. Mallerwine? Okay, I wanted to see if I could succeed my past records. Miss Chantel Brown, if you could come up here. Where are you? Chantel is our student of the month, Points of Pride. This young lady truly brings tears to my eyes. Chantel Brown has made one of the biggest impacts on the Higley High School campus, from her involvement in student council to being an officer for Best Buddies for 3 consecutive years. Her compassion for others and the commitment to spreading the word of acceptance in the Higley community is evident. She has spearheaded an annual Spread the Word Inclusion Assembly, which, by the way, she probably came in and met with me 50 times to make sure that it's perfect, and it was amazingly perfect. To spread the word to end the word campaign. She's also helped with the Spread the Word Inclusion Carnival. We had over 400 students at this carnival this past year. I know there were many of you guys here that came to it. It was just a truly tremendous event to see kids from all over the East Valley. We had our special education students and general ed students and Best Buddies programs from all over, and she spearheaded the entire program. Chantel's planning on continuing her mission to help those with disabilities by studying speech pathology in college. However, she will never be forgotten at Higley. Anytime you walk into the campus, the 48-foot Best Buddies banner, which she organized, will always be a reminder of what her vision was for Higley: inclusion, acceptance, and compassion. As her best buddy, Tia, who's in the back, always says, there she is. Chantel is the best buddy. I love her, and she's my best friend forever. Chantel's the sweetest. Right, Tia? So thank you, Chantel, for everything. Love you. And I'm going to hand over the microphone. Sorry, I'm going to hand over the microphone so that they can introduce their families that are here, each one by one.
My mom and dad are here, Don and Vicky, along with my wife, Karina, and 2 of my daughters, Becca and Melinda.
My wife, Patty, and my oldest daughter, Nicole.
My mom and dad, Debbie and Neil, and my grandma and our family friend, Kitty and Jim, are here. You got to stand up. And of course, Miss Caitlin Cole came to support me as well.
All right, I have my mom and dad and my sister Rachel and my 2 friends Myanna and Natalie, and I also have my best buddy Tia and her mom.
Wonderful. Stop it.
You are. Me. That's why I'm coming over here.
But wait, there's more. Dr. Fowler?
We want to catch this gentleman before he takes off to do some other things. This is a press release from the National Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association. They're pleased to announce that Aaron Dilley, Athletic Director at Higley High School, has been recognized by this association as a certified athletic administrator. To earn this distinction, Aaron has demonstrated the highest level of knowledge and expertise in the field of interscholastic athletic administration. The voluntary certification process included a thorough evaluation of the candidate's educational background, experience, and professional contributions, as well as a rigorous, comprehensive written exam. Aaron is one of an elite group of interscholastic administrators nationwide to attain this level of professionalism. The NIAAA is a national professional organization consisting of all 50 state athletic administrator associations and more than 10,000 individual members. It is dedicated to promoting the professional growth of high school athletic administrators and preserving the educational nature of interscholastic athletics and the places of these programs in the secondary school curriculum. And I just want to personally say, this being my 31st year as an athletic administrator here in Arizona and also in Canada, Aaron is exceptional, and he's one of the most skilled athletic administrators I've had the pleasure of working with. And so this recognition is very well deserved. Thank you for all you've done for Higley, and let's congratulate him.
And we're still not done. So I would like to call up Caitlin Cole. I'm sorry, gosh. Sorry, Caitlin, wrong Caitlin. Caitlin Large and Olivia Sear, please. Come on up. With our amazing Pommies. Higley High School Pommies, come on up.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Large. I'm the head coach for Higley Spirit Line, and this is Coach Olivia Sear. She's our pom coach. We're having a fun week this week because we've had a lot of opportunities to celebrate our season successes. We had our banquet last night, so that was really great. We've worked really hard, and the girls have worked really hard to make sure that every season is more successful than the last, and this season was exceptional, and we're so proud as coaches. We have a team of about 58 girls in our program. Our freshman team competed once this year and received second place at their competition. Small but mighty, our JV team worked really hard at their final competition. They received first place at the Pink State Championships. Our varsity cheer team worked incredibly hard as well, set a goal for top 3 at the state championships, and they made that happen as well. Our varsity pom team, which these girls are a part of pom as well, placed second at the National USA Spirit Nationals this past February. And tonight, we're super excited to celebrate these 7 girls right here for working so hard throughout this season. They put in extra time and extra practices. They are our jazz team. They performed beautifully at every competition. They brought tears to our eyes even at practice when it wasn't even all glammed up. But they performed every time with passion and purpose and together, often changing in like 30 seconds to make it happen too. And we are really excited to announce that at the USA Spirit Nationals this past February, we brought home our first national championship. So we're really excited for that. And as coaches, we're so proud of you girls for putting in that work, and it was definitely well-deserved, and it just makes us more excited for what's to come in the future. Thank you.
I'm like, I know. Look, it's Nancy. It's Nancy's size.
Thank you so much. Congratulations. Good job. This one's dead. Can I have another one? Yeah, that'll be okay. Can you plug that in?
President Reese, members of the board, we do have upcoming events. This time of the year, it gets really busy. So on March 28th, April 1st, Vice President Kaler and myself will be going to the ASBA National Convention and bringing back lots of great information, followed by a governing board work retreat on Saturday, April 6th at 9 a.m. And then on Wednesday, April 10th, we'll have our governing board meeting and work study starting at 6 p.m. And then Saturday, April 13th, it'll be our annual Higley Fine Arts Festival at Higley High School starting at 9 a.m. And then Thursday, April 18th, we have our Teacher of the Year dinner at the Doubletree Elegante at 6 p.m. And then on Friday, April 19th, we have a break, no school. That's upcoming events.
All right, thank you. We will go on to board comments. We hosted a business partners breakfast this morning, which was really great. We had a lot of business partners here, and they help support Higley and some of our events. So it was really nice to have them here today. A lot's been going on. Mrs. Wilson?
I just wanted to say thank you to all the staff and all the employees over spring break. I drove by many of the schools and there were still cars parked. They were still getting things done. I noticed teachers' cars. And just a special thank you because I know that that's your break too and you are using it for our students. So thank you so much for that.
Any other board comments? Like Dr. Thomason said, we have a lot coming up. All right, we will go on to request to speak to the governing board. We value input from our constituents. This time has been set aside for anyone from the audience who wishes to address the board. Please remember, this is not an appropriate venue to evaluate, discuss, or criticize district personnel. Policy KEB provides a process for complaints about personnel. Speakers should be aware that false statements about individuals may result in civil liability. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. And I have a request to speak to the governing board by Dr. Mallerwein.
I don't know. All right, maybe I'll get this before I end up finishing today. President Reese, Governing Board, Dr. Thomason, Cabinet, as a lot of people have heard, I'm going to be leaving Higley Unified and moving on to Mesa in a bigger role, and money was a little bit of an issue. It was a decider, and I just wanted to publicly tonight thank Higley for the opportunities. I've been here for 6 years. I got to open a middle school. I want to thank Dr. Thomason for taking a chance on me and moving me into a role where there may have been some doubt if I could do it, and hopefully I didn't let anybody down. So I wanted to thank you for doing that and getting me into a role. And I want to thank Dr. Schillenberg for working close to me, and members of Cabinet for tolerating me. Ms. Diab and my team for putting up with me for a while, but I've grown tremendously, and I've given my heart and I've given everything I can to Higley, and so I feel good about that. But yesterday was a tough day for me because I love being here and I love the people that I've worked with and I love the kids in the community that I've gotten to serve. But I just wanted to thank everybody publicly and say thank you for my time here, and I hope to stay in contact with everybody. I'm going to work my tail off the rest of this year to make sure I create sustainable structures and leave things in place that we can move forward. So you won't see me taking Fridays off. You won't see me missing days. I'm going to be here and I'm going to work hard. You have my word on that. But I just wanted to publicly tell everybody thank you.
Dr. Mallerwein, stay for a second. I think we probably all thank you. Stay for a second. Well, yeah, so that's a super classy thing to do and say. And I was going to mention later in my comments, I saw there's some retirees, and you think people will never retire and never leave, and that they'll always just be here. But there will be some other changes in Higley, and I'll just tell you the same thing I told my son when he left for college. You know, this will always be home, but go make your way in the world, but just don't forget your family, and please leave the course description guide stuff too.
Thank you. We appreciate it. We wish you well, and like Scott said, don't forget us. We're here. We may be smaller than Mesa, but we're still here, and we're mighty. So we hope to still see you around. So thank you. All right, with no other request to speak to the governing board, we will go, we'll go on to our consent agenda items. And I move that we approve the consent agenda 6.2 through 6.12 as they are presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments regarding the consent agenda? Mrs. Reach, I thank you. We did have a last-minute add to a field trip, and I thank you for giving us the comments as to why it was a last-minute add. So I appreciate that. That is helpful. Any other questions?
Just, President Reese, thank you. A few things that Item 6.5, the Student Activities Fund report. I know we've been getting those, and I can see a difference in that the funds are not just piling up. They're being spent, and that's really good, and we should all pay attention to that. That was something that we were interested in. And then item 6.7, I talked to Dr. Thompson about this, and this may come up, I think, in policy. I just noticed out-of-state travel. There was a lot of people that were driving their own cars to Denver and Long Beach and San Diego, and I think it's a policy thing, but that may just be something that comes up later on down the road for policy. I think we can adjust and maybe make it a little bit better for our staff, so I just wanted to give you, I guess, a heads up. And then item 6.8 is just a first read about staff participation in political activities, and I just want to reiterate to any teachers that may listen to this that you are still an American citizen. You can still participate in political activities on your own time. And even though it's not a duty of a citizen, I would encourage everybody, staff, student, just regular old citizen, whether they agree with my politics or not, just to participate. Because when we all participate and when we all vote, we get a pretty good government. We get one we deserve. But when we don't get involved, then we end up with maybe a government that a handful of people have chosen. So stay involved. Our democracy right now needs everybody to participate more than ever. So that's all.
On that note, Mr. Glover, I too was reading that very carefully. And back when I was in school, my husband and I were just talking about this the other day. We didn't know where our teachers stood when it came to politics. It was kind of like that game to guess. Is he a Democrat? What is he? Today, it's a little more noticeable in our classrooms, and so I just want to make sure that we're all very careful of that as well. So thank you for updating this, Mrs. Good, and appreciate your comments to Mr. Glover.
Thank you. And Mr. Glover, I noticed that as well with the personal vehicles. Our staff is doing a lot of travel over the summer for professional development, and we appreciate that they are giving up some of their time to better themselves in their craft, learn. Some of them are learning new stuff for programs that we have coming. So we appreciate their willingness to do that. So thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries 5-0.
President Reese, members of the board, in the consent agenda, you just approved the new principal for Coronado Elementary School, Mr. Jeff Armstrong, who is here with his family. We'd like to welcome him. We are very excited to have you join our team. Please introduce us to your lovely family.
So I have my beautiful 3-year-old, Lucy, my 5-year-old, Charlie Zoe, my baby of 5 months, she's only 5 months, Frankie June, and then my wonderful wife, Samantha.
Thank you. We'd like to welcome you to Higley. We're excited to have you. You will, I guess it's a forewarning right now, you will see our faces on campus. We do like to come visit the campuses, and so we're glad to have you. So welcome, and we appreciate your family, and we will spend some time getting to know you. Thank you.
And you don't have to stay with all those littles. I've been there.
All right, so now we are going to go on to our action and information items. We have received the fiscal year 19 monthly governing board finance report for February. We again appreciate your staff and everyone putting this together. I know I like getting them every month, and it is available on our website, so it's available to our public. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Holland on the monthly budget report? Awesome. All right. We will now go on to 8.2 for our human resources update.
Just a second. The laptop works a little bit different than my desktop computer. There we go. Good evening, President Reese, Vice President Kaler, members of the governing board, my fellow colleagues on cabinet, and our Higley community. My name is Mel Martins. I'm the Executive Director of Human Resources, and I'm here to give you some updates in some categories that we've been talking about throughout the school year in relation to human resources. Once we get to our medical premiums, I've got my colleague here, Miss Isabel Herrera, who's our benefits specialist, and she'll be coming up and joining me and chiming in where applicable. So I want to first talk about a project that we have in terms of our certified evaluations. And part of this was part of our strategic plan to discuss and evaluate our current teacher evaluation assessment model, STRONG, and where we go from there. So in regards to the update, I will be very open and transparent and say time goes by fast. I know all of you can relate to that. So we held our first meeting with a large committee. We had a representative from every school site, as well as various administrators in the fall. And we talked for a little over an hour about what's working, what's not working, what are concerns, what are our topics and areas of interest in relation to our current model, or what have we seen out there that we might want to see done differently here at Higley. We took a lot of notes, and those are our themes that we're going to carry over. And it was a mix in regards to some of the communication that was brought up from our various teachers as well as our administrators who use the tool on a regular basis. There was concern and themes that I've heard actually since my arrival in terms of the evaluation tool and why this is part of that process in relation to teachers not getting a full picture of what their evaluation looks like until the end of the year because of the way the STRONG model adds and sums up the summative at the very end and the point system which in it works. We had administrators who were in the room who had been at other districts, and at those other districts, they shared conversations from other models that they've used, whether it had been Marzano or Danielson, and where there's benefits and challenges to those too in regards to when you're evaluating and observing a teacher and all the notes that you have to take, whether it's scripted notes and word by word, or if it was check marks that you could pick because you had a laptop in front of you and you can choose them and do some general notes and then come back and do some larger notes. So we talked about all of those things too. So at this point, in the meantime, in the spring term, what I have done is I have reached out to Frontline, and they're our platform where our My Learning Plan exists and where the STRONG is integrated for our administration as well as our teachers. And we talked about how could we incorporate another model if that is something that we have to do and if it's necessary, and what can Frontline do to help us in this process, because my understanding through some discussions with other school districts is that Frontline had helped them. There was a little bit of confusion in regards to what had been relayed to me, where Frontline said, we don't help you find the model. Once you identify the model, we help make that model fit within the Frontline My Learning Plan system so we can have it all integrated, whether it's pieces, all of it, parts of it. So since then, I've also reached out to various evaluation tools that are known and used across the country and their representatives to set up phone conversations about having them come present to the committee. I've also asked if I could get help from my fellow colleagues in terms of my time and being able to really champion this product or this committee and this project. So I've asked and reached out, and I've got a few interest administrators who are already identified on the committee, or they're going to help and take over and help chair that or co-chair that and help us move forward. And so the next steps are gathering the themes, creating a rubric, and then starting to invite other representatives of other models to our campus to talk about those. And at this point, given the time of year and where we're at, I really see this something that's going to expand into next fall, and then hopefully, potentially piloting something if we've identified it for the spring term with a full implementation and transition, if applicable, for the 2021 school year. And so that's where we're at with certified evaluations. I'll be honest and say we've not had an opportunity to look at the classified evaluations, but that is something that has to be addressed too in the bigger picture of evaluation tools here at the district. So going on to the next section, a section that we all like to talk about, and as I said, I'll invite my colleague Isabel to come up and stand with me, and if there's any questions that both of us could answer. So the next area, and a topic that really is just unsustainable for the future for organizations, school districts like us, as well as corporate. I know President Reese, you deal with these own challenges within your organization, and I'm sure all of you, whether it's through partners, spouses, etc., know where we're at here. So just like last year, overall, Higley Unified School District has had good experience. We have 4 plans, just as a reminder. We have our Navigate plan, our high deductible plan with a health savings account, our mid PPO, and our premium PPO. Some of those plans have had higher loss ratios than our other plans. Something that's new to me, and it's really what I found out in my time in Arizona, it's more carrier than necessarily state. But where I had been before, we were part of the Blue Network, the Blue Cross Blue Shields. And when you were with them, you got a breakout of all your loss ratios per plan, and you got your premium renewals based on those plans, and you as a district or an organization determined where might those premium increases go. And I use the term smoothing if you want to create that smoothing effect to help that cost for your employees or for your organization. We're currently with United Healthcare, and United Healthcare actually does that smoothing automatically. We get to find out what our loss ratios are for those plans, but then they let us know, based on those experiences, what our total increase will be. And next year, our total medical increase benefits are going to be 9.3%, which is trend. It's trend for the state of Arizona. Nationwide, last year it was 8%, and then 9% for Arizona. This year, we're seeing a higher trend, around 10%, so we're under trend, but 9.3 is still impactful. One of the things that I do want to point out, though, prior to my arrival here, but when we were with other plans within our last consortium with ASBATE, and I'm looking at the page, here we go, here's the page that I have, with Meritain, sorry. I was like, how do you pronounce that, Meditain? We were looking at increases in the double digits. So in 2015, we were looking at 16.4 and 18% in premium increases then. We were very fortunate with the transition and the district going out for an RFP, and we took on United Healthcare. We saw those premium increase decrease quite a bit. And we've been very fortunate the last couple of years to get really good increase renewals in the bigger picture. So, I mean, what we need to do in the future, and what I've talked about last year, and Isabella and I talked about last year, is we continue to have to educate our employees. We have to educate them about the value of healthcare, the cost of healthcare, and how to make good consumer choices, because that's what really goes into those experience and loss ratios. Because for some of our plans, I mean, we've seen almost 200% loss ratios for some months, but again, we have good loss ratios for some of our other plans. The big picture has been positive for us. we're fortunate that we're one of the only school districts in the area who employee-only coverage still pay 100% of the premium. There are districts that are going away with that, even if it's minimum $25, $30. So that's a great benefit that we give our employees, and we're able to help in terms of that base level for each employee who has a benefit position who opts to take our insurance. One other thing that we've learned through some communication and dialogue with some of the other school districts in the area, Isabel has been great with putting together a group of benefits professionals for the East Valley and other areas, and coming together and talking about best practices and sharing what they're doing, how they're doing, and how they come up with other creative plans. So I'm going to give the mic over to her for a little bit to communicate some of the things that she's heard from that, which I think is valuable to hear.
So I collected, like Mom said, the East Valley area. We got Tempe Elementary all the way to Apache Junction. So we got a wide range of the East Valley schools. We had a 2-hour meeting, and that wasn't nearly enough time to discuss everything that we want to do, and we all had a bunch of opinions and had to share stories. But we are one of the few districts that have the best nice rich plans. The other school districts only have high deductible health plans. Yes, they're contributing into a HSA, but our plans are much more richer than their plans. So that's something to consider. And I think when we're out recruiting, we need to make sure that we're telling people that, because they're not aware. There were a few districts that went to Kairos. And interesting enough, a few school districts had an IT analyst. So they're in charge of all the platforms in HR, which is very, very helpful. So something to consider maybe down the road. Queen Creek, their premium rates went up 5%. Chandler went up 6%. And everybody else was still in negotiation. So we're there. Something to consider again.
I think the key thing that Ms. Herrera mentioned, and what I want everybody to hear, is that our district has what is commonly used as rich plans, and I'd love to continue to offer that, but it comes at a cost, and that's where the education piece has to come in. And I consider myself a fairly good expert when it comes to insurance, and it's still difficult for me. So imagine how this is for our employees. Last year we talked about the fact that a lot of our contracts were ending. We were very fortunate, with the exception of our medical benefits, all of our other things, life insurance, dental, eye, are all coming at a 0%, so there's no premium increases in those areas. This is the only one, which is to be expected, as we said. We did try to go out for an RFP. Unfortunately, it wasn't, there were, I'm going to say, some hiccups. And so we decided that it was best interest for the district to pull that RFP, and we're going to try and go out again next year in regards to putting it out there and seeing who bites and what other opportunities that we might have that could be better funded for us.
Mrs. Martins?
Yes.
Is there, with United Healthcare, so when an employee comes in, maybe somebody that's been here for a couple of years, and they go in and they see, when they sign up, are they able to compare year to year, like their out of pocket versus what their premiums were? I know Blue Cross Blue Shield does that for employees. Like, it shows you had this plan, you spent this much this year. If you were on this plan, this is what you would have spent this year. Like, it helps kind of educate. Does United Healthcare provide that for our employees?
From what I know now, we don't, but that's something that we could look into as a possibility. When we have our enrollers here from board services, they do discuss that with them, and they make sure that they give them all the information that they need. They'll sit there and ask them about their health history, and we'll look at this plan design, this plan design.
So, Ms. Martins, Ms. Herrera, this is not directed at you, please. That was the nicest spin I've ever seen put on a 9.3% increase that I've ever heard, I will say. I mean, it's staggering, really, and it never ends. But I'm seeing more talk, and some of the older folks here might remember, there was talk in years past of why don't school districts get together and why don't we have like a state state get-together, and I'm starting to see talks of that ramp up. So okay, I'll let you talk. It looks like you want to jump in.
President Reese, members of the board, there is an ongoing conversation in that, and it's one of the vendors we'll be looking at. It's Carios, a vendor through the Arizona Risk Retention Trust Program, and so they're kind of aligned with them, and so that'll be one of the programs we'll be looking at as we move forward.
I would also like to take a moment just to share my long-term goal is with this group of individuals, maybe at one point we can build our own consortium and get buying power that way.
I had shared with Isabel when she had brought that to me where I had been previously. Time gets the best of me, but 6-7 years ago, there were 3 CFOs that got together from 3 different community colleges and said, let's create a consortium for that buying power. And we all had different plans, and those plans offered different things, but we were able to come together, create a consortium, and by the time I left, we were at 7 or 8 community colleges that were part of that, and we all had our own individual plans, but we had the buying power, which was wonderful in that bigger picture. And as Dr. Thomason mentioned, Kairos was approached, my understanding, by the trust to look in that and create that. But as Isabella mentioned earlier, some of those plans aren't as rich as ours. So we have to first educate to make sure our employees understand that it might be a lower cost, but it comes at a different loss benefit, for lack of a better word. And is that what we want? But again, also thinking about the fact we're not going to be able to sustain things the way they are if we don't make changes in the future. Right? I think we have a little bit of time, but we have to think long-term and what that will look like. And then the last topic that I have before joining with Mr. Holland is the classified schedule. So I don't know what other word to use other than the fact that, well, first let me say on a positive note, I am thankful for the colleagues that I have in human resources and the work that they've been doing. When I talked about the classified schedule in the fall, I talked about how we were going to be looking and researching at all of our classified staff, and we did. We pulled each file for every active classified staff we had. We looked at their rate, we looked at the work they did, we looked at when they arrived here at the district, we looked at how many years of experience they were given when they got here, if they transferred positions, to gather data to make sure that we really looked at this big picture and did not take it piecemeal. I don't know what other word to use other than it is ugly, and I'm just going to be honest. Something that I am grateful for is that we have joined 7 other districts within the Valley in a compensation and classification study. Tempe Union sent out the RFP in the fall, and we joined them, not knowing for sure whether or not we'd be ready to join now or if we'd join later, and we had an opportunity to join sooner. And they're gathering great data in regards to not only classified but certified positions and the district. And the districts that are involved in it are Gilbert Public Schools, ourselves, Chandler, Queen Creek, Kyrene will be joining next year, Apache Junction, and Casa Grande. So we're getting good data, and we're talking to an expert who knows what they're doing. And he was here Monday afternoon, Mr. Vance Jacobson, and we talked about the compression issues that I saw in working on this during spring break and learning about what we're doing. And it's great that we're at a place where we can raise our base rate to the $12 an hour. But side note, I was at a job fair yesterday, and I was right next to Costco, and Costco starts off all of their jobs at $15 an hour. So when you're still competing against an organization who's just up the street, who's paying everybody $15 an hour, which is $3 more than what we're going to move to, that is challenging in that bigger picture for us. So thinking about big picture, holistic, what are other things that makes Higley attractive and want to come here and work for us? But all of the things that we said was going to happen has happened. You know, we looked at certain categories of employees, and we saw that, you know, not only did our salary schedule not make sense, like I mentioned in the fall, but that when you look and drill down to certain employee classifications, for example, our parapros, there's a lot of disparity there. So that's something that's going to be a little messy. And then we looked at if we move to that $12 an hour, we have individuals who've been here 3 years, came with 2 years experience, and are only making $12.06 an hour. So you're talking about that compression in which we've addressed. And so Mr. Jacobson and I talked about some things that we talked about last fall in regards to we'll have to come up with multiple options. And I said we have to do that for Mr. Holland, so then that way I can present to Mr. Holland different budget impacts. And so that way we could talk about if this, then that, and what can we afford, what can we do off cycle, what can we do now, a little bit more, et cetera. But it's a big project. It's not an easy project, and I'm glad we're doing it, but it's hard, and I'm grateful, and I wish and I hope if they listen to this, are classified here that we're working on it. We're not just doing things nilly-willy. We are working on it because we want to do it right, but it's going to take time because it's not something we can change overnight.
In reference to, are we having communication with those people? Because as I'm out and about, I hear that the people that have 12.3 years experience is $12.06, and then the new hires are coming in at $12.62. So I know we're going to work through this. So are we having communications with our people that have been with us for 2 or 3 years to say, we hear you, be patient with us, we're going to get through? Is there some communication that's taking place out there in our community?
So there has been, and I actually had a meeting with I meet monthly whenever I can with our HEA representatives, and they give me some feedback about what's happening across the district, as well as I've talked to various administrators that are giving me the temperature and feel of what's happening on their site and their campuses. So we sent out multiple communications in January. I've gotten other inquiries, and then we've responded to those inquiries. Some of those have been by phone call for the district and human resources, some of them by email, and responding back. And I have communicated a few times to our administrators to help me communicate this out to them, because as much as we've communicated, it doesn't make somebody feel good, right? In the bigger picture. And it's like, just give us time, because again, I don't want to just shift you to a rate and it not make sense later, and then we're sitting down here another year or two down the road and we're trying to fix it again. I want to learn my understanding prior to my arrival. There was a couple years ago, not so much for classified, but for certified, we had to do some market adjustments. We did them, and then there were some areas, and we always make mistakes. None of us are perfect, and I'm sure there's some areas where we will, but they made some areas that were big mistakes and had to go back and fix them, and then in the rush to fix them, made some more mistakes, and at that point felt like they couldn't correct them again because, it had been done, right? So that's what's very cognizant on my mind for that bigger picture, and so I'm asking everybody who I talk to is go and relay, just bear with us. We know you're valuable. We want you to still be here, but we're figuring out what that permanent picture looks like to help lead us in the right direction.
Honestly, I think if you went to those people, is my mic on? Okay. If you went to those people and had that same conversation that you're having with us, I know we do have 13 schools, that would come really well versus an email just seeing, hey, everybody's going to start out at $12 and you're at $12.06. I do hear the empathy in your voice, and I do think that might be a piece that you could look into, possibly going to those campuses and seeing those people. But thank you for all your work, because I know it's hard, and I know that you came into what you described as ugly. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. I think that's a great idea, and actually something that I got kind of toyed with a little bit. Of course, I'll still not reach everybody, but I will actually take that advice and think it's probably valuable to at least set up some multiple times at different campuses and sites to invite people to come and just ask questions and hear what they have to say one-on-one, or not one-on-one, but at least in person. So in regards to in addition to that class and comp study, something that I want to bring up, and it'll tie into Mr. Holland's presentation, and I'll stay up here with Mr. Holland and chime in when needed. As I mentioned earlier, is this is going to look not just at classified. Classified was our first large picture elephant that we had to address, but we also know that there are areas in our certified ranks to where we have to address too, and this goes back to some of what we said I believe before spring break when we were here, in regards to when we extended that years of credit to 8 years, is that now we have to look at our base salaries for all of our certified positions. And that's next year's work, but this will help preempt that as we head in that direction. So
I'd just like to make a comment that Mr. Glover usually says, is it's another unpaid state mandate, and that has not been taken into consideration from our legislature, that the state minimum wage has changed. When all said and done, come January, it has increased tremendously over 4 years. And we have to do it, and we're not compensated for it. And when you look at how many classified staff we have and what was considered reasonable for the jobs based on salary schedules, whether you agree that that's a livable wage, not livable, it was based on the economy, the scale, and everything. When you look at that change, that's a lot of money that has to go to that. And I'm not saying that our employees don't deserve it, and I'm not even going in that conversation. It's simply that we have been mandated by state law to do these increases. And I think you guys have done a great job trying to keep gaps where duties and roles are different, and it is a huge undertaking, but there's a lot of money involved. And I would be interested, Mr. Holland, at some point, I know you guys have a lot, to see, based before minimum wage changed and where we're going, what those total dollar differences are. Because it would be interesting, and I think it is worth a conversation when we have that dollar amount, to be able to have conversations with our state legislatures and say, you know, look, we have had this amount increase that has had to come out of our budget. We have to, it's not optional. And we need some different compensation. I think that conversation needs to happen, but until we have overall numbers, I don't know that that conversation should happen yet. But I think it is worth a conversation how much school districts have had to change and increase monies coming out of their budget that we haven't had when our budget hasn't increased to compensate for that.
Absolutely.
So at some point, I would be interested to see what that total dollar amount is from the time our minimum wage started increasing to what we project based on January of 2020.
Absolutely. I think as part of the project, as we're deciphering what the cost impact on budgets can be, that could give us an idea to share that. And then as we actually then offer and know where we're at and the people that we have, and looking and comparing from year to year could probably provide some of that. Yes, I agree. And then one thing I just want to mention too, before any other questions that you might have, is one thing that I'm excited about, and something that I had where I was at previously, is a true classification system. So a lot of times, employees will say, well, my job isn't what I was hired to do. And so as part of this class and compensation project, we'll actually get a job analysis tool. They call it Job MEAS from the JB Reward system, and that will help us evaluate to make sure, as we're looking, which most classification tools do, is you evaluate based on factors of what the job is: degree, years of experience, communication, impact to the institution or the organization. So all those things will be helpful too, so then we can clearly communicate to people that we did evaluate, and we evaluated on a tool that's reliable, and it warrants a change or it doesn't warrant a change, or what that might be, or what we can do based on some of our constraints budgetary-wise too. So now, before we move on to the next section, are there any other further questions? Okay,
we're gonna have questions at the end too, right?
Yes,
I wanna go back. Okay.
yes. There's still more to come, but I'm gonna invite Mr. Holland to come up and join me for the next section.
Wait, is he going on to the bond stuff? Okay.
Yes. We thought it would make sense to incorporate them together since they were related to HR type items too that were updates.
And I do appreciate you getting these numbers together. I know, Mr. Holland, you were gone, and I appreciate it very much.
No problem. We're happy to do it. So, before we get started, I do have a joke for you, right? That's a requirement. So I better read it. So one of my assistants, Ryan, is he's always the one that my go-to person. Say, hey Ryan, I need some new jokes coming up for this week. So here's ones that he sent me this morning. So what do you call an elephant that doesn't matter? An irrelevant. Okay, guys. All right, so we'll try another one. None of these are keep roaring. So, how many apples grow on a tree? All of them. Very good. Point for you. So, I'll bring candy next time. Okay. So let's get started. So there were some There were some questions that had been coming in, and were from some of the board members and some of our staff. It was asking for some salary and benefit update information for next school year. So of course, before you start trying to talk about all the additional funding that may be available, it's important to start with the funding formula itself. So I kind of wanted to give everybody a good, at least better understanding of exactly what is included in that formula. So we'll start with, of course, your funding is based on per pupil funding. Okay. So in 18, the base level support was $3,729.31. When we started building the funding formula for FY19, you start with the previous base level, the $3,729. You add in any inflation. So this year, proposed last year, inflation was 1.8 or $66.30. So that's additional money that's added to that $3,729. Plus, then towards the end of the year, the governor's plan came out for the 20% by 2020. So last year, they appropriated, it was calculated out to be, they were planning for a 10% increase for FY19 for our teachers, which that equated to $210.50. So if you take, which is new money, you take the 66 plus the 210 gets you to the 280. You take your 3729 plus your 280 gets you to your per pupil funding of $4,009.57. So that is the funding that we had available for this school year. So now we start looking at, okay, what about in 2020? So again, you start with your base level, 4,009. Inflation this year is projected to be 2% or $80.19. So a little bit higher than FY19. Not great, but still little. As well as the governor's plan. Again, this funding, since it is not mandated in statute, there is no guarantee that this funding will come through. But if it comes through, we are estimating it to be $105. So you add your $80 plus your $105, so you get to $185. So your per pupil funding for next year is projected to be $4,194.76. A couple of things I just want to reinforce, and because some people may not be aware of this, But the governor's plan, the 20 by 2020, is based off of FY17 average teacher, statewide average teacher salary. So not Higley teacher salary averages, whatever it is statewide from 2 years ago. Then we're going to start adding funding coming forward, right? So to give you a better idea, so before the governor's plan came about last year, in FY18, they first came up with the 1.06% salary bonus, because it wasn't any money added to the base. It wasn't any money added to base level salary for the teacher, nor was it any additional money added to the base funding formula. It was just, here's some additional money for you to give a stipend of 1.06, which we did in December of 17. Then last year, Governor's Plan 20 by 20 came about. So the appropriation for FY19, so this is the year we're currently in, this is the first year that this additional funding is now being considered part of the funding formula or the per pupil funding. So 1.06 was just a bonus. The 210 is now part of the formula. And if the additional money for next year comes about, it'll be 105 that'll then be added to that base level funding formula. One thing I also wanted to just kind of point out, so the governor's plan, again, it's 20 by 2020, right? But if we look at what has the district done for our staff within the last few years. So the district has, governing board and the district has approved salary increases for teachers from FY17 through FY20, so you're in a 4-year window. In 17, it was a 3.5% increase. In 18, it was a 2% increase. In 19, that's when the governor's additional funding came in, it was for a 10%, and the governing board approved an 11% increase. In FY20, governing, you approved a 5% increase for our teachers, which is consistent and right on target with the governor's plan, assuming that funding comes through. So in essence, if you add all of those up, actually, you've awarded 21.5% increase to our teachers within a 4-year period of time. So we're well above already, surpassed the governor's plan.
Pardon me, Mr. Holland? Can I also state too that the raises we given are also the compounded raises? So the 5% is a compounded of the previous 3 years. This 10% was a compound of the previous 2 years.
Right. So what he's saying is that each year, so in 17, for example, we gave a 3.5% increase. When you approved a 2% increase for 18, it was based off of and included that 3.5. So now it's whatever it was plus 3.5. Now you're going to get 2% on top of that. Then going into 19, you had your 3.5, you had your 2. Now you get your 11 on top of that. So basically what we're trying to say is it's compounded each year. That increase is based off of the raise that you had already given in that year as well. Does that make sense?
Mr. Holland, yes. Quick question. Do our teachers understand that the 5% and the 10% that Governor Ducey was based on that 2017 numbers, average salary, and not our average of Higley?
Well, we have communicated that as often as possible. Yes, I don't think that people necessarily really realize that. That's kind of why I'm highlighting it multiple times here this evening, so everybody kind of has a better understanding.
And also, so when we have approved, I guess in my head, I'm just trying to process this, the 2% is their actual salary, not like
it's their salary,
their actual
but the funding is based off of 17.
Even if the funding is based on a general average,
we still have provided a raise based on that teacher-specific salary where they were and added that percent and compounded it
Correct.
every year.
Correct.
Thank
What
you.
I'm talking about is the additional funding is based off of 17. The raises that you are getting are based off of that employee's individual salary increase going
Mrs.
forward.
Martins, is that how other districts are doing it as well?
Yes,
Are
that
they
is
pulling
correct.
it off of their own average within their district or their own, each individual person? Or are they doing it more like, oh, we're going to give it 2% across the board?
Well, it does depend on the district. So, last year there's a mix of things that happened where some districts gave what they said averaged 10%, but they might have gave a flat rate plus a percentage increase.
Okay.
Time gets the best of me, but a couple months ago, I had communicated with a number of my colleagues throughout the East Valley, and everybody responded back. Where I did get responses is that they were giving the 5%, and traditionally, yes, they have given it compounded off of their salary.
Okay.
One thing that I want to make note that we're aware of, and we do our best to communicate. We try to communicate in many ways, and we try to communicate, as you said earlier, Ms. Wilson, with HEA. And as I was talking with them earlier, I said, you're our ambassadors to help continue to communicate this message out there and communicate it to as many teachers and certified employees as you can, and hopefully the message keeps continuing. But we also take phone calls, and I've taken some emails from concerned certified employees in relation to what the board had approved prior to spring break. One thing that we have heard anecdotally from some of our colleagues, whether it's been Dr. Thomason from other superintendents, Gary from other CFOs, or myself from HR people, is that there's some districts who will not be able to give that 5%, or they will not be able to give the total 5% because, again, the way the funding formula works, and they have declining enrollment. So if they have declining enrollment and they don't have that ADM, they're not going to get that total dollar amount.
And I'm going to pig pile. I want to re-say it because it's important. A 21.5% increase, really over, what are we talking, like it's just a couple.
It was 4 years.
Okay, that's significant. And then, you compound it, just in case you guys don't know, every time a teacher gets a paycheck, 12.3 last year and 12.2 before that comes out of our paychecks and goes into the pension, and then the district has to match that. So to even give 5%, that's not how much we were given. It doesn't pay for all the costs. So Higley has worked really hard, and Dr. Fowler, again, all your trips downtown and saving us money, all of these things add up to be able to give this much because it's got to come somewhere.
Yes, that is correct. And just to kind of add a little bit more to Ms. Martin's comment, talking about other districts. Again, so you're basing it off of FY17, statewide average salary. And so, yes, you will have districts that will get more money than they need, right? And then you will get those districts that get less. And that is all based off of their enrollment situation, right? Because as we just talked about, the funding formula, but if your enrollment is declining, then your additional funding is declining as well. So there are some districts that were not able to give anything.
Mr. Helen, just to refresh my memory, in reference to the per pupil funding of the 4,009 or the 41, where are we at in relationship? Are we caught up from 10 years ago at where we were? I mean, where are we at on these numbers and compared to the past? If not, you can supply that information later. I was just thinking, because we always hear about we're still 10 years
We
behind.
still have not caught up anywhere near what the funding use was previously in
that's what I'm
2007 and 8.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we have a long ways to go.
Okay.
And President Reese, members of the board, that's a little bit hard number to figure out because they've put money in some pots and taken money out of other pots. We could go back and take a look at the general total per pupil funding if we add everything together, but they've cut so many other areas too, including capital and district additional assistance in that area too. And so when you take all that into account, we're not close to where we were in 2008.
And I just think that's important for the community to be aware of when they see these numbers. We're nowhere where we used to be. And I think that's important to know that.
Yes.
And that's a really good point. While our funding, what we get, is not where we were 2008, and our previous conversation of what salaries have increased. So salaries have increased, obviously minimum wage, and I'm just talking about certified or classified, but when we look at this, minimum wage was not $12 in 2008, so there's a much larger salary, and we're still not bringing in what we were back then. So that's another huge disparity. You have less coming in and you have more going out. And so I think I'm glad you brought that up, because we don't have the same amount coming in. We're still not caught up. Right. And we have way more, because the salaries have accelerated, and I'm glad you mentioned they're compounding, because they're actual increases. But also, let's not forget about stipends we've done that have not gone into the salary, but stipends, bonuses that we've continued to give as well. It wasn't part of the compounding, but it was additional compensation. So, like Mr. Glover said, 21.5% over the last 4 years is a great increase. And in addition to that, we have done stipends as well. So I think that's important to remember as well.
You know, a couple other things just as where I was going with Mrs. Martin's comment also, you know, other districts, they include their classroom site money, their Prop 301, into their base. So that, you know, every year when she goes to a job fair and it looks like Higley's base is so much lower than in other districts, but if they actually took what the base is plus all of the additional funding that becomes available to them, our base is much higher, and we are very competitive. But that's not how people consider it. Plus, if you're building in your classroom site dollars and everything towards your base, then that also helps you when that additional funding comes in to give that 10%, because you have other pots of money that you can pull from as well. Whereas at the district, that's a completely separate pot of money that we give separate and apart. Does that make sense? And going back to, we brought up the question and the situation regarding where we were previously, you know, when they cut the funding formula for capital, or DAA, which is what the state refers to it as. Yes, they are trying to restore that formula, but we are still a long ways to go from that. And because of that, every year the district has to take money out of their operating budget to move it to capital to be able to meet those capital demands, because the state doesn't provide that funding as well. So there are, you know, when we start talking about a pot of money, and I'll show you in just a minute, and you start factoring in everything that has to come out of that. Yes, so the stipends and supplementals, to give you an idea, our stipends and supplementals are a little over $1.4 million, right? That is separate. So you have your regular salaries, you have your stipends or supplementals. Next year, Ms. Martin's proposal is to try to offer additional years of experience, which again is additional funding that will be available for our staff. Plus, we have our classroom site dollars, which I'll talk about here in a couple of minutes. So again, all of those things are additional funding that is available to our teachers that is completely separate from this funding formula. Does that make sense? Question? Okay, so now we've talked about the formula. Let's talk about what our proposed budget will be for next year, for FY20. So because of the enrollment fluctuations that we have had this year, we've had a decrease in elementary with an increase a little bit in high school, so it's kind of been flat, for lack of a better word at the moment. So with that, keeping that in mind, we are proposing flat enrollment for next year. So flat enrollment means what additional money are you going to be getting then, right? So our enrollment, 17,069. The base level funding formula we talked about, 4,009. The only additional money is that $80.19. That's the 2% inflation. Not factoring in the governor's proposal. So per pupil funding would be a little over $69.8 million. I have it labeled as other budget factors, but what that makes up is our override, our Prop 123 dollars that we have from the state land sale trust, as well as our any carryover dollars that we're able to carry over from year to year. So estimating next year to be a little over 10.2, so you're looking at a budget around 80 million. If we then go and factor in the additional money from the governor's proposal, you'll notice that you see that $105 there. So that does bring our per pupil funding up to a little over 71.6. Because you are increasing your funding formula, you'll notice that your per pupil funding also goes up a little to 71.6, and the 10.5, excuse me, because that's also based off of your enrollment data and your funding. You with me? So we're proposing our budget to be a little over 82.1. So we are trying to figure out, well, what is the difference between if you add the governor's additional funding or without it? You'll notice that's a little over $2 million. Questions on any of that? No? Cool. So next, what I would present to you tonight is a picture of what our M&O salaries and benefits projection for FY20 looks like. So you'll notice our certified teachers, you've approved 5% for the teachers, 5% for counselors, 5% for the instructional coaches. You can see what the base salary is for 19, what the cost of the increase will be, and what the new salary total amount would be for FY20. What you'll notice in here, and I have an asterisk to delineate, that for the administrators and the classified staff, our proposal is a 2%. However, that has not been presented to you, which we hope to do in an April board meeting. But as you can see, the total increase is a little over $2.4 million is what it's going to cost. And remember, I just told you a minute ago that the additional funding is $2 million, and we're at $2.4 million.
And one thing I just want to insert, and I alluded to this earlier, in 16-17 school year, we dissolved that trust. That's about $2 million, in which it's intended to use towards medical premium increases in the future. So you'll notice Mr. Holland has a blank in that medical for that percent increase, because we're going to take that 9.3%, that's approximately $500,000, and we're going to actually take it from that trust reserve to help pay for that. So that's an additional cost that we're looking at for next school year. Big picture, at some point we hit a cliff, so we'll have to talk about how we edge our way there. Dr. Thomason, members of Finance Cabinet, and Gary and I, Dr. Schillingberg and Dr. Fowler have talked about how we have to add in our budget what those increases are, even though we're going to support them out of a different fund. So then that way we know that there's not going to be a huge cliff, and we'll have to figure out different ways to possibly do that in the future.
President Reese, members of the board, we have taken a fiscally conservative approach to the use of that money, and so we pay for the increase, and so we're 1 year in the rear. So next year we'll come up with the increase for this year, but then use that fund to pay the increase if we have one the following year. And so every year we're 1 year behind on our increase, and so that's a fiscally conservative way so we don't come to a cliff and spend all the money at once.
And if I remember correctly, it was estimated that the money that was in that trust fund was estimated to cover the increase, I believe, over 4 years.
I think it was a 5-year window.
Was it a 5-year? Mm-hmm. So, because I know that when we dissolved that, that was the discussion and the intent to use that money, because it was for medical premium money, and that's what it could be used for. It could not be used for anything else. It's when we had looked at trying to be self-insured and realized that that was not financially feasible, at least at that time, that when we dissolved that trust, that money was intended to help offset the cost of
Increases
increases.
only.
Correct. So the increased, each year, the increased premium, so,
Right.
yeah.
So for example, the increase that we're going to see next year, we'll be able to pull from that fund for that specific amount. But going into the next year, you have to then absorb that whole total into your M&O budget. And then any increase you have in the next year can come from that fund. But ultimately, the whole total still has to end up in M&O. And when that fund, as Ms. Martin referred to as a cliff, but when that funding is exhausted, then the district will have to figure out another plan. Questions? No? You know, one thing I wanted to mention back a moment ago when we were talking about the increases, the salary increases that the district has been able to, has approved over the last 5 years, you'll notice that I started with FY17, and because that is the year that the district approved a 3.5% salary increase for that year. That is also the year that our maintenance and operation override went into effect. That is what provided us with, gave us the additional funding to be able to provide those salary increases, because that was a little over $8.9 million. Also remember, that year we also did give a stipend in December. So it was a 3.5 plus stipend that we had given. All of that, of course, was made possible because of our override dollars. Same with going into 18 and 19. Because of the override, is what has helped us be able to make these increases. Okay, so next, I wanted to focus specifically on teacher salary and benefit projections, because that was where the question really was geared to. So as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, for certified teachers, counselors, and instructional coaches, you approved a 5% increase. So I show what the base salary is in 19. Again, I show you what the increase will be, and then what the new salary amount will be. So you're looking at a total salary of a little over 30 million, 30.4. The increase is a little over 1.5. So the new total will be a little over 31.9. Plus we have the medical benefit, the benefits. Also, just wanted to note that state retirement, which I'll show you here in a couple of minutes, has increased every single year, which is an additional cost that the district is required to pay. Also, you'll notice that, so that's a little 6.1. Medical is a little over about 3.5. Again, it shows 0 in the increase because we're going to use that 951 fund to help with that. So total benefits a little over 9.7 up to a little over 10 million. So you're looking at 40,205,000 this year to a little over 42 million next year, which the total is a 1.832% increase. Again, I just wanted to, we talked about the governor's plan, the 20 by 20. The governor's plan for FY20 is a 5% increase, which is what you have approved for our teachers.
Mr. Holland?
Yes, ma'am.
Based on the title of the slide here, that is only teacher. Is that correct?
It's
well, the ones that are listed here.
correct.
So what you're showing is a $2 million increase, but that doesn't include any of our employees outside of these categories. So the $2 million that we're getting, if it comes through, is right there, and we haven't talked about administrators, we haven't talked about bus drivers, we haven't talked about aides, we haven't talked about our secretaries, we haven't talked about anyone else.
And that's where we're going next.
Okay,
Okay.
Thank you.
So I
But
wanted to
real quick, sorry.
just yes, ma'am.
One more thing.
Nope.
But when we say certified teachers, 5%, we in Higley added our counselors and instructional coaches, and that was not included in Governor Ducey's original numbers.
Correct.
So
So
our-
that's what I'm going to explain to you
Awesome.
right now. Okay. So 2 years ago, when the 1.06% bonus came about, districts were required to create a definition of how exactly do you define your teachers. What do you consider to be a teacher? Because if you remember, that 1.06 was only out of function 1000, which that specifically function is for instruction. Those are for your teachers only. So it was no new money for anyone else. But again, the district gave a raise, and everybody got that, but that had to come from somewhere because the funding was not made available, additional funding. So at that time, we had decided that our Higley defines our teachers to all employees who provide instruction to our students. That includes, but not limited to, classroom teachers, media specialist teachers, counselors, as well as our site-based instructional coaches. Our average salaries are derived on a base salary only and does not include the supplemental pay that we've just talked about, the classroom site monies, any pay for performance, or any longevity pay. The supplemental pay includes some of the following, and I was trying to give some examples, of course: mentoring, leadership, coaching, department chair, tutoring, summer school, etc. Again, as I say, this is not an exhaustive list, but it's just to give you an idea of exactly what is included in all of that. That we had to, by law, determine that 2 years ago and post that on our website. We also had to post what was our average teacher salary, and we have to do that every year going forward. So if you look on our website, there is a tagline towards the bottom in the blue that says teacher salary information. And if you go there, it shows you what the average teacher salary was, that our average teacher salary for 18 and 19, and what the increase is. So we talked a little bit about, and I just made reference to some additional money as well. Again, this is money we do not include in the base, but as you can see, the district has also approved an increase out of those classroom site dollars every single year. So the first year, 16-17 year, it was $5,200. Next year, it was $5,550. This year, it's $5,900. And for 19-20, it will increase to $6,500, which is a 10.2% increase from this year to next. Pardon me?
Last
Yes,
number.
so I was just saying that this year it's $5,900, next year it's going to be $6,500, so that is a 10.2% increase from this year to next. Again, the point I was just trying to drive home is that this is an additional increase that the board has approved every single year, and you'll notice the largest jump going into next year. Questions? Okay. So let's look at it from a picture as opposed to a table or whatever. Okay, so new money, a little over $2 million. Teacher salary increases, a little over $1.8 million. That leaves $229,147 left. All of the other increases for the remaining staff equates to $583,349. So you take your 229, you subtract it from your 583, and shows that you're $354,202 short, which means that money will have to come from another source somewhere. Does that make sense? Questions? So it's not saying that, you know, you're getting this additional $2 million, and that money should all go to our teachers, because the purpose of the funding is to provide the teachers with the 5%, which is what we have done. The additional funding is to be used however the district determines. So the 2 million, we've given the 5%. There's 229,000 left, but we still need to come up with 583,000. Okay. So it's not like it's extra that we can just go ahead and award out again, because then we would be 583,000 short. Now that is just for salaries. So please keep in mind that we haven't talked anything about the entire budget as a whole. And as we know, expenses increase every single year. And as I just explained to you a couple minutes ago, we're projecting flat. So only new money is $80.19. So right now our projections are a little in the negative, but we typically make that up through our vacancy savings, and as we close out all of our encumbrances, that's what frees up and covers those projections. Make sense? Question? No? Okay. Okay, so we talked about additional resources required. As I just mentioned, we need to come up with $354,000. So after the district has exhausted the $2 million, we'll still need the $354,000. As I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, state retirement has increased every single year. So you can see from 15-16, it was 11.47, where next year it's projected to be 12.11. So a solid increase every single year. Again, not new money, additional money to cover those increases. As well as Ms. Martin has already addressed, we've talked about a couple of times, the medical insurance increase for next year will be 9.3, but we are planning to use that Fund 951 to help cover that increase for next year. Questions? No? Okay. So that is short and sweet. So hopefully it answers your questions. Hey, it is short. Wait till the next one.
Yeah.
The next one's 36 slides, I think.
And this was 8? And this was 8?
Yes.
Going along the lines of what Mrs. Wilson had mentioned of perhaps being out on our sites and talking to our employees to understand the classified piece. Is there a way that we could put some type of FAQ together? I know there's a lot of video, short video. There is a lot of question, and there is a lot of confusion, and I think what you presented tonight has been really clarifying, and I think it's really important that our staff understands the entire picture. And not to get into something we, excuse me, haven't voted on before, or yet, I know we have worked really hard in the past to ensure equal increases. Mr. Witovich has used his slogan of "We are Higley unified," and we are unified. And so we have only approved the increases that have come before us for teachers and counselors and things like that. So there's still more to come, and there's still more money to go out and limited money coming in. So I think if you did a short video FAQ on what we have done, and I think that's a good thing anyway, but the increases we have provided, the expense to the district on state retirement, like Mr. Glover said, that same percentage comes out of these teachers' paychecks too. I mean,
Yes.
so they get an increase and it cometh and go. But the district has that expense too. And as we continue to increase salaries, our cost increases as well. And so I think a short video, FAQ, something that explains the overall cost of an employee, whether it's at their salary plus what they receive for Prop 301, for the cost of benefits that we cover, for the cost of their retirement that we cover. I think that information somehow, some way, in a sweet little package, could be very beneficial. So, I mean, I don't know what the other board members' thoughts are, but what you went through and explained with the overall picture, the overall cost of an employee, I think is really valuable.
Okay. We will see what we can do. You know, one thing I just wanted to also remind is that the additional funding that came in for last year, the district awarded all of it out into salaries. There was nothing kept back to cover all of the benefit increases or insurance increases. The district covered all of that. The same with this year. So the funding that was coming in, we gave out the 5%. Again, nothing was held back to help cover those additional increases. That's why we're a little short.
President Reese,
Just kind of keep that in mind.
are you expecting the video to be directed towards our teachers and our staff or more towards the community? Because I think the community would value from this as well, but I think the teachers and staff sometimes, like, they know what's going on, but sometimes they don't. So I was wondering which way you would rather see it go.
President
I do
Reese,
think
members of the
direction
board.
would be good.
As you're speaking, I've been frantically texting with Michelle Reese about some of the videos that we did for some of our campaigns in the past through our Flagstaff Connection. It's one of those little videos where you see the marker and it just writes and talks about some of the campaign election stuff and those type of things. So we'll be working to see if we can't do something of that nature, like a public service announcement video type thing.
And I'm just thinking, this is just great information for anyone to have. I mean, to understand what Higley in itself has done, what our costs are, how we incur those, and what we have done with the governor's money. And I think all of us are very well aware, there's no guarantee for that $2 million yet.
No.
It's talk, it's assumed, but at this point, we're on the hook for that 5%, whether the state comes through it or not. So I think we're all aware of that. So that could be, I'm very hopeful that our governor will do as he said he would and make sure that that is funded. So, but I'm just speaking in general and whatever, the other board members think. Again, the information you presented tonight in a condensed version, I think would be very helpful for complete understanding for our community, what it costs for us to employ people, for our employees to understand what we have done and the cost that we incur as well. So I don't know what anyone else's thoughts are. Mr. Glover?
Sure, thank you, President Reese, and thank you guys. I think, first of all, I just want to say, I think Higley is doing a really good job of managing money and investing in our people and ultimately our students. It's been a lot of pay increases, and it's been good. Can you guys just nod your head? HEA is supportive of that 5%, right? Okay, so I think there's a notion that some teachers are unhappy, and I think a decent explanation would help them understand. But I would, if they were talking to me, I would remind them that the whole movement that started this was for teachers, but it was for custodians and janitors and air conditioning units and technology. I mean, curriculum books, all the stuff. It was for all of that. So we should just keep in mind that 20 by 20 is teacher-based, but the whole thing is, it's about everything. It's about all the funding for everything. And so sometimes some districts are going to only be able to give 4% or 3% or whatever, but I am proud to spread that money out among, our admin assistants and all of that. So, if anybody has a problem, I guess they can come over, knock on my door, and we can chat, nicely. But anyway.
Thank you again for this presentation, and I love how you always bottom shelf it for me so I can easily understand, because sometimes I get caught up into if a teacher contacts me and says, da, 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 this is what I'm hearing, and they're all up in an uprise. Sometimes I go with them on it, and I'm like, okay, I just need to see this very clearly so I can understand it. And I'm always so thankful that when I ask for that kind of stuff, you bring it to me and you show me exactly. And so then I agree with you, Christina. I don't think it is a large group, but I do believe there's some confusion out there as to where the money came from based on what dollar amount, how much Higley received, how much Higley sent out. So I agree, like this kind of video, these kind of information is so beneficial for all of our teachers. I love that idea, and I agree, Mr. Glover, with everything you said as well, that it's a privilege to bless many with this money. So I'm thankful that we can really reach out to everybody with this, and I appreciate that you guys make that a point too. I'm very grateful. I think that builds a culture that we've been striving for, and that's huge. So thank you.
President Reese, Mrs. Martins, and Gary Holland really put this together just last minute. We didn't know it was an issue until it came to me from 3 board members, and so I said to Gary and Mom on Monday, this is a priority. We need to get this together, and so they've just been working constantly around the clock to get this for us by Wednesday.
Thank you for spending that quality time because we can see it.
And it helps us when we talk to the community as well. Knowledge is power. But can I, way back, you remember when you did that thing on the certified evaluations? I had this, sometimes when you put a bunch of teachers in a room and administrators in a room and say, make something, they will make like, something that's really big and gigantic and sometimes unwieldy because everybody wants to contribute. But for my 2 cents, when they're doing a certified evaluation, the reason I asked for that long ago, and it's simplify. Keep it as simple as you possibly can for everybody, because it's the same thing year after year after year. But I would just remind them, simplify. When you're evaluating the same teacher, after 20 years, do we have to really go through everything with them? So simplify is my 2 cents for that. When you
And
talk
President
about
Reese, Mr. Glover, there are some state statutes coming along to help relieve some of the evaluation of teachers that are long-term excellent teachers. There's some things coming through that we don't have to follow the same process with tenured teachers, for lack of a better term.
Embrace them.
I guess I have one more quick question that just came to mind as I'm looking at this. So we say 20 by 20, and we're there, 21.5% by 20, but there is a possibility then next year another 5% from Governor Ducey, correct? We're not like...
Yes, that is correct.
Okay,
No.
so it's...
You as the district have done this, but based on the governor's plan, we're not there yet.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Also, just wanted to, I keep getting asked, when are we going to find out about this additional money? When? Well, the governor's budget is the last thing that the legislature does. So when the legislature finishes their session, sometimes June, that's when the governor's budget comes about, and that's when we will find out if we're getting this funding or not. But we can't wait. We have to build our budget on the hope and anticipation that this is going to come through. Anything else? You're welcome. Thank you. What's wrong, Mom? You don't want to stay up here? I have one. I come prepared. I saved this one for this particular presentation. So, want to hear a joke about construction? I'm still working on it. Ryan gave me another one. It says, 2 satellites decided to get married. The wedding wasn't much, but the reception was incredible. And then this one, I had to really scratch my head and think about it a little bit. Okay. Why did the coffee file the police report? Because it got mugged. Hey, don't shoot the messenger. Okay, so good evening, President Reese, members of the board, Dr. Thomason, cabinet, distinguished community. Tonight I bring to you a presentation update on how we have been utilizing our M&O, maintenance and operation override, as well as our bond dollars here at the district. So the first statute here referenced, ARS 15481, is specific to overrides, and basically it just says that every year between the period of September and the end of October, the district is required to prepare a public presentation and present how they have been utilizing those override dollars in the previous year. Our M&O override was approved in November of 15. It took place, or effect, July 1st of 16. In our voter pamphlet, we had mentioned that we were asking for this support and we were going to focus in 5 areas. So increase teacher compensation, maintain and improve elementary specials, provide staffing to reduce average class size, provide support for gifted, SPED, and all-day K, because as you know, the state does not provide funding for all-day K, and then provide educational resources to our classrooms, which were greatly needed. We were successful. Our community did approve this override, and so this is how we have been utilizing these dollars since. When your override is first approved, an override is for a 7-year period of time. However, you only receive full funding for the first 5 years. So looking at our budget for this year, you can see it's a little over $10.4 million. It's fully funded at the 15%, which started in the 16-17 school year and goes through the 2021 school year. The next year, in the 6th year, that override will decrease by 2/3, so it'll be a 10% override at that time, and that'll be for 1 year. The next year, it will decrease an additional 5%, and again, that will be for 1 year. Following the next year, it would be 0, of course. Unless, of course, our Higley community approves the district to be able to continue our override for another 7 years. Here, I kind of wanted to give an idea of exactly, so how much money has this override provided, and what kind of tax rates has been assessed to our community. So the first year, the 16-17 year, you can see it's a little over 8.9 million, and the tax rate at that time was 1.6251. That year, we had proposed or projected a 1% enrollment increase. In FY 17-18, you'll notice there's an asterisk there because that year we projected flat enrollment, so that means no new money. So that year, the override was a little over 9.4, and you'll notice that the tax rate did drop to 1.5479. That's because we projected flat. Okay. For 18-19 school year, we projected a 1% increase. So our budget was a little over 10.4. The tax rate for this year was 1.61. Next year, we again are projecting flat. So we're looking at override dollars a little over 11 million and our tax rate being around 1.6. And then looking at the 2021 school year, we're looking at approximately 11.5 and a tax rate estimated at 1.6631. This, of course, has a double asterisk that year, of course, because the assessed evaluation for FY20 does not come out until next year. So you have to base out your calculation on your 19 assessed evaluation. So this could adjust a little. One of the reasons, so one thing you'll notice, I only gave you the full 5 years that it's in full effect. I did not give you a projection for year 6 and 7 because I have no idea exactly what that year will look like at this time. I did put together an estimate of how we propose we will utilize these dollars this year and then the next couple of years. So again, our categories were increased teacher compensation. So we have an estimated utilizing $2.5 million. Next year, we're proposing 2.7, where the following year I'm proposing around 3 million. To maintain and improve our elementary specials, art, band, music, PE, as well as athletics and other arts. We have an estimated little over 615,000, 625 the following year, and 650 in 2021. Another category was provide staffing to reduce average class sizes. So again, 2.5, proposed a little over 2.7, and the following year, 2.9. Provide support for gifted SPED all-day K, 2.3, 2.5, and 2.5 the following year. So with these additional dollars, we have been able to increase our teaching staff as needed. We have been able to maintain our all-day K. We have been able to provide a salary increase for all staff and a small increase each year, of course, is the plan, assuming funding is available. We plan to continue our longevity stipends and supplementals that we had talked about earlier. Continue to provide additional resources to our classrooms. As Ms. Martin had mentioned a little bit ago, we're looking at a class and compensation study. So there may be some market analysis adjustments to salaries that we may need to address in the future. And as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, the hope and plan is to be able to, for next year, to be able to provide additional funding for additional years of experience. Sustain our art, music, band, and PE that we just talked about. Also, we started a new curriculum adoption. It's a phased process, but we started that the first year of our override, so the 16-17 year. So far, we have adopted ELA and math, and we are looking at adopting science for next school year, as well as being able to provide additional money for subs, because if you'll remember that because of reduced funding, there was not a lot of additional funding for subs, and we were having to cut lunch aids as well. So the override gave us the additional funding to provide more subs for our teachers when needed, as well as put the lunch aids back in our classrooms. And we were also able to reinstate some of our bus routes. And yes, of course, know that we are very appreciative and grateful for these override dollars, but of course, it was not enough to cover everything that I just went through. And so know that any overage, of course, had to be covered out of the district's M&O budget. So what am I asking, or what are we asking? So our proposal to the governing board tonight is to consider asking our community to continue the 15% maintenance and override, or M&O override, on the November 19 election ballot. One key important thing to take note here is because this is a continuation, there is no new additional tax. It would be the same tax rate that you're currently paying now. So it's not going to cost more. And of course, the override money will still continue to be used in the same categories in which we were originally approved, as I just had presented a couple of minutes ago. Questions on that?
Yes, Mr. Holland, I was wondering if we still have so many years left, is asking now for the 2019 so that it starts over that 7 years, starts next year? Or is it because we get full funding then for more years? Why
are we
soon?
asking now? We're asking now because remember, as I said, in year 6 and 7, it begins to decrease. So next year would be our 4th year of our override. And the hope is to be able to ask our community for a continuation then. And crossing our fingers and toes and anything we can, it gets approved. However, if it does not get approved, we can still have the opportunity to come back next year and ask again and hope, crossing fingers and toes, that it gets approved. Because if we wait until next, to the November 20 election, you only have one shot. And if it doesn't get approved, it decreases the next year. So
President
the
Reese,
plan
members of
is
the board.
to try to give ourselves 2 options.
It's also important to note that the following year would be a large election year too, and so we want to get out there in front of that and make sure people are knowledgeable that it's not an increase in taxes, it's a continuation of what we're already doing. And so next year being an off election cycle year would probably be a better chance for the district to pass that than the following year.
Because the following year will be a presidential election year. And oh, what fun that will be to compete with that one. Anything else on override?
If we asked for this to go onto the ballot, what year would that take us through if it got approved?
Basically, it would start over, so your 7 years would.
So it starts over that day, so we do it in 2019, November 2019, does it start over then and it's 5 years and then the 2-year break again, or does it add on to? You understand my question?
It does.
Does it add on, like, do we get another 7 years from the November date, or do we have to wait until the November 2020 date?
No, it would start over.
November 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect.
It would go into effect for the next school year, so it would
Yes.
would start July of
2020, yes, and then
and kind of reset that clock at that point.
That's what I was asking. If
Yes.
it resets the clock then. Thank you.
Correct. Anything else? Okay. So next, let's talk about bonds. So on the November 2013 ballot, the district was approved a bond authorization of $70,580,000. The citation that goes along with the bond reporting is 15,491. It is the same as the override. Between September and October, you come and present to the community of exactly how you've been utilizing those bond dollars that previous school year. Tonight, we're going to talk about how we have utilized these bond dollars since the beginning, since inception. So as I mentioned, the authorization was for $70,580,000. We sold that in 3 bond sales, starting with FY 14, 15, and the last bond sale was in May of 16. So we have, and each year, when you do your bond sale, you have to determine exactly how much you're going to utilize of those funds into the categories that we're going to talk about here in a couple of minutes. as well as then how you're going to utilize that specific bond sale for furniture, technology, and equipment. Because, of course, money used for those three areas has to be repaid within a 5-year period of time. So each bond sale, the district had to determine how much of this sale are we going to use for those. They refer to it as FTE, but I just didn't want it to be confused with full-time equivalents, okay? So in bond language, it's furniture, technology, and equipment. So, again, some of our categories in our bond pamphlet of how we told our community we were going to utilize these dollars was for some new school construction, new buildings at school sites, some land, some technology updates and improvements for students, as well as some for administration, maintenance and repair improvements, and some purchase of some pupil transportation. As well as, excuse me, at the time, the plan was to do a modification over at the transportation facility that was in conjunction with a grant that the district was hoping to get at that time. It's my understanding that that did not come to fruition, so the decision was made not to move forward on that modification. So since that time, so for new school construction, of course, we built Bridges Elementary, which opened July 1st of 16. We also, so you'll see that in that category of new school construction, that $19 million. So that leaves a balance a little over 10.9 in that particular category. New building for existing school sites, and as well as the maintenance, repairs, and improvements. Some of the things we've done with those dollars is we did some front office renovations for security purposes at all of our elementary schools and our high schools. We did some building some additional classrooms for Williamsfield, Coronado, Higley, Power Ranch, just to give you an example of a few. We purchased some additional land. We purchased a digital marquees for various school sites. Last year specifically, the marquees were for Power Ranch and for Chaparral. Our repair and maintenance of existing schools, we utilized these funds for painting, new flooring, fence repairs, improvements to school sites, energy management system upgrades, as well as lighting improvements and HVAC units, replacement unit. We did some renovating and remodeled some restrooms at HTA, as well as some locker rooms at Williamsfield. We added some additional tennis courts at Williamsfield and remodeled or renovated the tennis courts at Higley High. We utilized those dollars for some additional turf. So we have additional turf at Williamsfield for their field. This year we have additional turf that we're putting in for Higley High for their field. But we also have additional turf that we put in for Chaparral and Gateway as well. We have purchased some additional pupil transportation, so buses and vans. So in school world, it's yellow fleet and white fleet. But in case people don't know exactly what that means, which I didn't at the time, I'm like, why don't you just say a bus and a van? But we also, one of our categories was technology upgrades and improvements. So we have a technology refresh plan that we have utilized these dollars for. Again, that's helped district-wide, so student devices, as well as other technology improvements, and here at the schools and at the district administration buildings. So you can see, when I talked about technology for a moment, you can see that we had 7 million and we went a little over 2.7 over. We had 14 million for maintenance and repairs and we went a little over 874,000 over. Now, one thing with bond dollars is it does allow you for a 10% variance on the total. So again, the total award was $70,580,000. So that means your variance is $7,580,000. Does that make sense? So in those categories where we went over, you can see we've already started to utilize that variance. But But we do have, because we were very specific in our pamphlet, new school construction, new buildings, we do have 10.9 remaining in that new school construction category. And of course, unfortunately, that's not enough to build another school. So we have that there. As I've shown you, we have about $3 million we've used for a variance, so we have about $4 million left. But as I'm showing you, we have 10.9 sitting in one specific category, plus $7 million for new land. We purchased the land, it was a little over $2.3 million. So we have $4.6 million sitting in that particular category. We talked about the transportation remodel that did not come to fruition, so you have $1 million sitting there. So right there, you're at approximately $15 million, and you only have $4 million in variance. So a couple of things also with these bond dollars and looking at our future. So the district is working with Stiefel, who are our financial advisors, to determine our long-range plan and how we will utilize these remaining bond dollars, as well as looking towards the future as to what we may need to do going forward. Of course, going forward, we will eventually need to have an additional or new bond. But of course, the state statute only allows your debt limit to be up to 30%. So right now we're around 23, 24. So the difference is not large enough to be able to go through the process of asking for a new bond at this time. And of course, as we have already mentioned, these bond dollars, of course, since the state does not provide enough funding for all of the capital needs that the district has, that's why we are required to go back to our community for assistance and help. So what am I asking you? So again, same sort of thing. The proposal here this evening is to ask the governing board to propose and ask our community to allow the district to repurpose those remaining bond dollars in those categories on the November 19th election ballot. Important thing to keep in mind, again, is it is money that the district already has that's already been approved, so there is no new additional tax. It's just a repurpose of the funds that we currently have. The repurpose categories that I'm going to present to you here in a minute, so you'll see that the repurpose categories, 3 of them would be categories that we already have been previously approved for. And we would only be incorporating or asking for 2 new categories. So you'll notice the very first one, so non-administrative purposes, that means school sites. So it's not admin type buildings. So the new category, of course, and I labeled it new, would be to construct, remodel, renovate, improve school facilities, maintenance of buildings, and grounds. Now you'll notice that's a very broad category, but the intent to that is because we were so specific in our election pamphlet. Currently, we have a situation where we have money in categories that we cannot utilize. This category, being an overarching category, would address any needs that the school has. And so there we're asking for a little over the 10.4. Technology upgrades and improvements for students, $400,000. So remember I mentioned a couple of minutes ago that for furniture, technology, and equipment, you have to determine each year how much you're going to utilize of that bond sale towards those particular expenses. And I was not aware of that originally. And so when I was working on putting this presentation together and talking with our lawyers, when the district sold those bonds, they said how much they were going to spend. So in reality, when it comes to those particular categories, we only have a little over 700, oh my gosh, I can't think, $760,000, excuse me. Because of course, we'd think that you have $14 million that you're trying to reallocate. Technology is continuously changing every day. why wouldn't you be putting more money into that particular category to be able to meet those needs? That's why. It's unfortunate, but that is how it was determined at the time. Plus, then we have some pupil transportation, so 1.5 there again to continue to purchase some additional buses and vans as needed. Some of those categories, when I was talking about it being very overarching, some of the plans for next year is to build an athletic center at Williamsfield, remodel and renovate the weight room and locker rooms at Williamsfield, replace the track at Higley. So we did the field this year. Next year we'll focus on the track. We have some HVAC replacement and repairs that we're going to need to do. Additional lighting and lighting replacements at various school sites to give you some ideas. Maintenance and repair. Huh? No. Well, I was kind of giving some examples of how we utilize in these particular categories. So it's kind of redundant for a minute, but I was trying to explain what would fit in those particular categories. Okay. So for administration, you'll notice again, same thing, new category, same purpose, being broad, to try to address any issues that we may have. Again, so we have roof repairs, building repairs, maintenance, painting, HVAC, as well as a small amount for administration for technology.
Mr. Holland, can I ask a question right here?
Yes, ma'am?
So based on the non-administrative purposes and the administrative purposes, the 1.9 for new in the administrative purposes, the new category, would that only be the district office and the bus barn?
Well, it's any administrative buildings. So yes, you have your district office, you have your maintenance, you have the transportation, you have HCPA, because that's not necessarily a school.
Gotcha.
So any of those, any buildings that the district has, that is not for a school.
Okay. Thank you.
Another
And
question.
again, these are just estimates. Okay.
You brought up a good point. We, the board had previously approved having the Higley Field and track replaced. However, it came to be that the track was not replaced as we were approved for this time this year. Was there money left over from that project because the track wasn't completed?
So since we did not, it was decided in the beginning that the track would not be part of the turf because the expense was just going up. We decided to address it separately. And so,
It's in my wheelhouse. So what happened is you are correct, and thank you for paying attention. That was initially what we had. We did suspect, and I didn't, trouble you with that piece, but just like we had at Waynesfield, all the expansive soil issues, when we actually got into the field area and dug up and had the geotechnical reports, they came back and they advised against what we had proposed, because we had proposed to take off the top layer of the track, and our budget was based on that. And what it came back was, no, you need to go down to the very base and basically take out all the asphalt, treat the soil underneath. And so that escalated the costs way beyond just replacing the top part. And so as opposed to derailing the whole project, one of the things that we did too is we stabilized where the new ground is, and because it won't get the water, we think that it might mitigate it. But the geo experts, the technical experts, suggested that in 4 months we'd know better if the track was still moving. But we did discover some other things. For example, all of the sisu trees that were planted for shade around the track, all of the sisu trees, and you can see almost, if you go out there, the track, everywhere there's a crack, there's actually a sisu tree, and the roots from the sisu tree were going there to where the water was, and that was also causing, and so there's multiple issues that were unforeseen when we went into it. And so when we replaced the track, we wanted to do it the very right way. And we felt that it would be poor use of district funds to just scrape the top off, which was done about 8 years ago, and that was a result. And so we made that adjustment. So that's why that scope changed.
And so they did do something to the track, though, currently, yes?
So what's going to happen, it hasn't happened yet, but so it's being repaired and
Will it be AIA
repainted.
approved then
Yes,
during
yeah,
that repair?
Yes, and it'll be eligible for use, but we're going to have to revisit and, spend more money to get it. When we do it, we want to do it right, because when it was done 8 years ago, it was not done correctly. So that's the short version. I'm happy to spend more time individually if you want, and I can come and show you some of those things, but that's what happened with the track. Okay.
And Mr. Holland, I have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
Where we're talking about the pupil transportation buses, yellow fleet, white fleet, is there any possibility of us getting in with the governor's plan budget to obtain buses? Because supposedly there is money out there for buses.
Well, we had that, the state had that settlement with Volkswagen, right? So there was funding available for buses, but unfortunately the district doesn't qualify for any of those dollars. So you get into that free and reduced category, and where you are. So that because we don't have that low or that high number, excuse me, we don't qualify for a lot of those additional funding that's out there.
I just wanted to ask because I knew that it was for free and reduced was a driver of that, but if it comes up, because they were talking about all these districts getting new buses and that there's new bus money available, I just wanted to ask to make sure.
We did look into that when it first came out. Because, we are continuously always looking for every dollar we can find, right? So next, I wanted to talk about some of the projects that we have done this year and what we're proposing for next year. And yes, some of these are consistent with what I have already mentioned the previous slide. That's why Dr. Thompson had said you didn't advance your slide. But I was trying to give some examples as to what fits into that new category. So you'll notice, so for this year, again, we've been talking about the Higley High football field replacement. We have some fence painting and lighting projects that we'll be doing. We have purchased 6 additional buses for this year. We have some technology upgrades and improvements for some students. And then, of course, we have other capital projects as they come up and are determined. Some of those, for example, like we have a flooring project coming up. Those things are done over the summer. So those are not necessarily determined at this moment in time. That's why it falls under other projects to be determined. And then what we're proposing for next year so far. Again, construct the athletic center for Williamsfield, remodel the weight room and locker room at Williamsfield. We have a weatherization and enhancement projects. This is a partnership with the SFB, or School Facilities Board, to weatherize Coronado and Santan Elementary. So the state does not fund painting projects, but they will fund weatherization projects. But in my terms, it's still paint. But so to give you an idea, because it's like, well, what exactly is weatherization? It's a fancy word for paint. Plus, we do have some sinkholes that we need to repair at some of our school sites. Continue with our fence paintings and lighting updates, some flooring enhancements, the Higley track that we talked about, and then, of course, others as determined. So, planning for the future, recap of everything we have kind of just gone over tonight. 2 things. November 19 election. Ask the community to approval to continue our 15% M&O override. Again, we're please remember, no new additional tax, so it's not going to cost anything more. As well as ask the community to allow us to repurpose our remaining bond dollars. Again, no new additional tax. We have also created, with Michelle and her team, has created a web page for us that's linked on the district's homepage, titled under Your Dollars at Work. It's a place where our community or anyone can go and see exactly how we have been utilizing those bond dollars previously and how we plan to be utilizing them going forward. Questions on any of that?
Sorry, I'm laughing. You said we have sinkholes and we're going to wait to fill them. You don't really mean like giant sinkholes, right? We don't have huge sinkholes.
It's in like from gophers and fields, practice
All right.
fields where.
I didn't want to paint up an image if we've got a
I
giant
can speak to
pit.
that. No, in fact, we have had a couple sinkholes, and that obviously we deal with those immediately. This would be more of a dip in a concrete that has to be repaired, so it's not an active sinkhole. But I mean, that's just
I know
the
you
term
do that,
we,
just in case
we use. So
anybody
it's like, yeah, no, we would. That certainly would be a high priority, and we'd kind of stop everything to take care of it. So, but it's just some areas where we know there's stuff going on underneath that we want to address. So, and that just the term sinkhole, I know, connotates houses falling into it and kids.
Yes,
and
thank
stuff.
you for the
Yeah,
clarification for everybody.
Yes, no, we would not allow that to occur.
I would just like to, Mr. Holland,
We took care of it.
in reference, when we talk about the district webpage, communication is very important. This is March. I remember when we went through our strategic plan and the communication section, they had a discussion with us in reference to the, I think they referred to it as the gray wave. At that moment, it's the population, mature population that has a high voter turnout in reference to elections. And it's so important to continually to communicate with that population here in the community. I think we talked about it at that time with the strategic plan in reference to newsletters, a variety of different resources. It's not just a district webpage. There's a whole population out there that's not going to our district webpage that will be voting. And so we need to get that information in front of them. I know my neighbors that aren't involved with the school district here, to get things in their mail, it's a multitude of things, options in reference to that. So I think if we're going to be looking at any of these type of things, we need now in March to begin that communication, not just communicate with them in September to vote for this.
Correct.
We need to start beginning that relationship with the community. So.
President Reese, members of the board, that's perfect timing. We do have a newsletter that's getting ready to go out, and we have actually talked about it, and there will be 2 publications before the election in November. And so we know that that's important, and we know that there are some individuals that don't do the online media and are not part of our community to get all the communication that we have. And so we have 2 paper newsletters that are going out to our community.
Thank you. That's an excellent.
And just a quick reminder, this is right now just a proposal for us to think about, that it's not asking us to vote on this yet. So I agree, but we have to be careful what we put out there, because as a board, we have not voted whether we would put this on a ballot or not yet. So quick question though, on our bond. So we're asking to repurpose. Is there an amount of time that $10 million that's sitting there for school, will that go away, or will it just sit there?
Unless we are
I'm just saying, if we're not repurposing, I know at one point we missed the boat on because economy, but we had approved bond dollars that we couldn't use.
Access, correct.
And access. Is that potential? I'm just saying, if we don't repurpose, is that a potential? Is there a time frame on us using them for them to expire, not be able to, anything like that?
Your only availability is the remaining part of your variance, unless your community approves you to be able to repurpose. Otherwise, it sits in that category and you can't utilize it.
Unless
There's not like a statute of limitations that eventually, after so many years.
That's what, okay. And there's too much money sitting there to even go out for a new bond, correct?
Well, it's balance of funds has nothing to do with potential for future bond, right? That is driven by the debt ratio that I talked about. Okay. So next, what I have for you are some slides of some of the different projects that we have done at each of our school sites. Because I wanted to highlight and make sure that everybody kind of sees that every school site did get something from these dollars. So again, what did we do? We built Bridges Elementary. At Centennial, we installed a drinking fountain, as well as a concrete slab with a cover. Please keep in mind, this is just one example. I don't have a complete list. It's one thing from every school. So at Chaparral, they got a new marquee last year that we talked about. Coronado, we utilized there where we had to remodel some life skills rooms, and we painted some hallways, some baseboards, etc. All at Coronado. This, of course, was Dr. Fowler's team is the one who was able to do all of this construction, so we saved a lot of money. So my point is just that, we take every option we can to try to be good stewards of these funds. At Cortina, here's the remodel of the front office that I had mentioned for security purposes. So this is just one. At Gateway, we had some weatherization last year and painting of their new mural. Higley High, we were showing what their track looked like. Their field.
I'm sorry, I need to talk in the mic. That is the practice field that we did some work on. And so that's what you're seeing, just improvements made to the practice field. That's not the varsity field, that's the practice field. Obviously, we're aware of the new field being installed on the varsity field as well. So,
at Higley High, we repainted the exterior. Higley Traditional, last year we remodeled their library or media center. At Power Ranch, we added some classrooms there for their Desert Choices program that had moved from Gateway Point. Santan, they received a digital marquee. At Williamsfield, this is showing the new building that was added at Williamsfield, which provided an additional 2,500 square feet. Correct?
20,000 square feet.
Let me see. Let me cheat. 16 additional classrooms increased capacity to 2,500 students. Because I didn't print all of these pictures, so I'm like, okay, so my notes are somewhere down there. As well as last year, we painted the new mural at Williamsfield. We talked about turf. So last year, we had turf at Gateway and at Williamsfield. We purchased some new student computers. We talked about technology updates and improvements. As well as, here's a picture of one of our new buses. And so that is all I have for you tonight as it relates to override and bond. Any additional questions?
I just wanted to say that I've been to Higley Traditional, and those rooms look amazing. The ones that have been refurbed and redone look great, so thank you.
Anything else?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with that, now that the Mr. Holland show's over, no, I'm just kidding. Yes. Thank you. That's great information. We appreciate that. All right, we will go on to 8.4, which is the approval of our offer for our at-will employees. I move that we approve the contract language as presented.
Second. Oh,
Any questions or comments?
go ahead. You're not going to comment?
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries 5-0. We'll go on to 8.5. I move that we approve the 2019-2020 administrator contracts as they are presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments on the contract language there? All right, all those in favor? Aye. That motion carries 5-0. Right, we have our future agenda items. Any questions,
President
comments? Mrs. Kaler?
We had a previous, and I don't know if it just has been moved or whatnot, but we were having a counseling update, and I don't know if it's going to be a work study, if it was just going to be an information item, but it's disappeared off of our upcoming. Anybody know anything?
President Reese, members of the board, we've got such a long topic. I know that in one of our cabinet meetings, we talked about how when, before the break, Jen Corey was able to do some of the updates in relation to wellness and the things that we've been doing. Some of that was there, but we did push it back because just so much to cover in areas of interest, but we can, if that's something you'd like to see sooner, we certainly could add it sooner if that was the case.
I would like to see that moved sooner, please.
And I think for clarification, I believe the counseling update that was being requested is the academic counseling, and with the students on how often they're meeting with them. And I think Mr. Witovich, you had requested that. If I remember correctly, it was preparing their ECAP and all that information. Excuse me.
But that's different than the April 24th, career readiness, CT, special education, that's different? I just remembered it was even with Mr. Thornock requesting, you know, our update, and he had mentioned vaping and things like that. So that was kind of that's what I thought was coming, but then we did have Mrs. Corey do some mental health wellness. But anyways, I just saw that whole kind of content disappeared.
So President Reese, members of the board, I have that we'd like to add an academic counseling update that contains how often our counselors meet with students, the ECAPs that are presented to the kids, and how we prepare them for post-secondary educational or vocational or military or work opportunities. Is that correct?
That's, as I understood Mr. Witovich's request, and yes, Mrs. Kaler, I know the vaping piece Mr. Thornock had talked about prior to leaving the board. So I think that piece, like you said, Mrs. Corey had kind of addressed about Wellness Week and things like that. Unless the board wants more information on that, I think that we're good on that piece. Like I said, I understood the counseling update to be Mr. Witovich's request for academic counseling.
And post-secondary opportunities.
And then I know, Dr. Thomason, you and I had talked about, we were supposed to have a field trip presentation. I know there's a lot of discussion and questions and comments and things going on regarding field trip requests and processes and procedures. That was supposed to be tonight. I understand that was postponed, but we don't have a new date for that. It's not on our Okay, it's been removed from our future agenda items. It's not on here, so I just wanted to make sure.
President Reese, members of the board, I just wanted to add one clarification. I noticed up on our upcoming events, we have an AFR final revision update. That's actually should say budget. So we will do our final budget revision. Actually, we'll be presenting it to you in April, but by law, it's May 15th. Okay, and then the budget for next year is in the June timeframe that we were talking about.
Yes, thank you. Is there any other?
One small, if I may, it's not really to add to the future agenda items, but Ms. Reese, I meant to mention it in board comments, I forgot. The stuff you guys did with the assistant principals on social media was very cute, very clever, and well received. And you know, assistant principals, you will hear about the principals. You never really hear about the assistant principals. It was thoughtful, it was neat, and it was good. And you deserve some acknowledgement for that.
Thank you. All right, any other information? Okay, just a reminder, we do have our board retreat next Saturday, so we don't meet, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, we don't meet before then. Mrs. Reach will be getting information out to the board members prior to then to prepare. So if you have any questions, once you receive that information, you can let myself know or Mrs. Reach. So other than that, I move that we adjourn. Somebody?
Second.
I want to go home. All right. All those in favor? Aye. Have a good night.